Back in the 1970s, a movement began that led to a revolution, a Jesus revolution. Time magazine wrote about it, several books have been written about it, and now we have a movie depicting it. And on this episode of Student Ministry Connection, we talk with Brent McCorkle, the co-director of Jesus Revolution. We'll hear his story, learn why you should see the movie, understand why it's important that your students see this movie, and so much more. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection, a podcast for those who serve in student ministry, want to connect, and desire to grow. My name is Steve Cullum, and I'm so excited for you to be here for episode 99. Back in the fall, I had an opportunity to check out an early screening of Jesus Revolution. And a couple months later, when I had another opportunity, I told my wife she had to come with me. And both of us walked out of the theater that night saying that not only did we learn a lot from this movie, but we were so inspired by what God did then and what he could do again. And today, I'm so excited for you to hear from Brent McCorkle. Brent is the co-director of Jesus Revolution, but he has also worked on so many other movies like I Can Only Imagine, Woodlawn, Unconditional, and Steve McQueen, American Icon. But before we jump into that conversation, I want to pause and thank the sponsor of this episode. G-Shades is a youth ministry curriculum and teaching strategy focused on helping students see everyday life situations through the lens of the gospel. G-Shades has options to fit everyone as well, with 3 plans to choose from. This curriculum gives you the resources that you need to do what you do better. Do you need message outlines, a discussion guide, and a game? That's just $20 a month. If you're looking for a higher production value, including bumper videos, Instagram devotionals, and parent guides, that's $30 a month. And if you want an affordable, engaging video curriculum, G-Shades has you covered for only $40 a month. You will not find a better youth ministry video curriculum at that price point anywhere. Head over to gshades.org, that's GSHADES.org, to download Season 4 of G-Shades curriculum and use the promo code CONNECTION at checkout to receive an extra $20 off your order. G-Shades, seeing life through the lens of the gospel. Thank you, G-Shades, for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can find the link to G-Shades in the podcast show notes. Now it's time to jump into this conversation about Jesus Revolution with Brent McCorkle. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Brent.
Man, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me out.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to see your work not only in Jesus Revolution, but also I've seen I Can Only Imagine and Woodlawn. And something I think some of our audience might not know is that you have various film credits to your name. So not only are you a director, but I found out you're a writer, an editor, a producer, and a composer. So is that something you've always aspired to do?
Man, my story's funny. I was in Dallas. I was already married. I had a bunch of kids. I had a mortgage. I was working at a church, and the passion hit me. I was a typical artist, man. I was lost. I switched majors 5 times. And when I finally found film and realized that's what I wanted to do with my life, I was in my late 20s. So a couple things happened. I realized I was already behind age-wise. And also, you didn't look to your left and your right and see a bunch of people out in Dallas trying to make movies. And so my thinking was, okay, I've got my family here. You know, I've got ties here. Both sets of grandparents were there. Like, I just need to make the best run of this that I can in Dallas. So my best, track I thought would let me get there was I just need to learn it all. So I was already a musician. I was raised in the church. I was a worship leader, and I'd already been dabbling with film scores and stuff. And my teachers saw how passionate I was, and they would spend time with me on the weekends and show me editing platforms. And I just thought to myself, I just need to become this holistic filmmaker, because I don't trust that my phone is going to magically ring and someone's going to go, hey, here's this multi-million-dollar opportunity out of nowhere. And so I don't know if you know the other Texas filmmaker, Robert Rodriguez, but very similar. He wanted to make film so bad, and he had no resources. He was just a street rat. And I really identify with that. I'm kind of a blue collar street rat kid that I took some film classes. I never graduated, but I taught myself all the different disciplines. I was working in crews and getting yelled at as a PA and all the things that you do. But on the weekends, I was running out with my friends into the woods with cameras that I usually borrowed or begged somebody to use,
Mm-hmm.
and we were shooting short films. And over time, I was honing my craft and getting some chops. So yeah, working for the man, to pay the bills and keep the kids fed and all that, but as best I could. And then also, on the weekends, trying to perfect what it was I was trying to do, which was to become a narrative filmmaker and hopefully get a chance to work on movies. And so, yeah, that's why all the credits, just because I felt like I was a bit on an island in Dallas, and just felt like I needed to learn it all to survive out there.
Yeah, that's cool. And to see, you're just doing what you got to do in order to make it and everything. So you mentioned that you grew up in the church and was a worship leader for a while. I'd love for our audience just to hear a little more of your story, your upbringing. How did you actually come to meet Jesus, and how did he set you on the path where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great story. I was raised in a church. I was baptized when I was 5. My dad was an executive at a large denomination called the Assemblies of God. And when I was 10, he brought me and my brother into the living room and he sat us down. He said, "Hey, your mom and I need to talk about something important. We want to start a new church in Dallas." And we picked up everything and moved to Dallas and started this church from scratch. And a couple of things happened. One, it was just this giant uprooting, of course, of our lives and starting over and everything. And that was pretty intense, finding new friends and new schools and all that intense time. But the cool thing that happened was I saw my dad chasing his dream really hard, and he had so much passion about it, and it really instilled a lot of things in me. And I'm very grateful for my dad. And I lived a similar path, and I would fail a lot and want to quit. And my kids especially were like my biggest fans. And I would apologize to them, because we would fall on rocky financial times, and that, I was kind of yanking them around, and it was a struggle, right? I was a starving artist who was married and had 5 kids. And
wow.
I struggled with a little bit of that, like shame and guilt wise. Like, it'd be one thing if I was single and wanted to like wash dishes and backpack across Scotland with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but like I drug other humans into this thing.
Right.
But my kids have really affirmed me and told me they appreciated me, and that I showed them what it's like to chase dreams too. So I think overall it's been good, for our family with the struggles and everything. But yeah, so yeah, my faith has really been a beautiful thing for me. I being raised in the church, not even really knowing I was an artist, I always try to tell people, especially people outside the church, how loving of an environment it is for artists, almost on accident. It's like, hey, I think you have some talent. Let's put you up on the piano. Let's get you singing. Let's get you doing goofy dramas with the youth group or the kids or whatever. How was that, man? I was just this kind of creative kid, but I had all these beautiful avenues to explore that artistry, but also I had a safe crash pad. I had a landing pad. So if I failed and played bad chords, I didn't get like shamed out and like kicked out of the church. Like, hey man, you missed that G chord. You might on the next one, oh, okay, sorry. And so yeah, I think the church is a beautiful place where creative kids, artistic kids who don't even know they're artistic, to get their 10,000 hours in and be loved and nurtured and encouraged. And I always bring this up in interviews, but if you look at America's Got Talent, American Idol, so many of those kids come from the church. And the reason why is they were given the opportunity to grow and make their mistakes and fail and learn and continue to achieve and get better and hone their craft and have more of a robust talent, because they've had all those hours to practice in a safe environment. So I'm really appreciative of the nurturing environment in which I was raised in the church as an artist. But beyond that, we come from a Pentecostal kind of charismatic persuasion. And the thing I take from my upbringing, and I bring this up a lot too, is when somebody was hurting, They might have cancer. They might have just been left by their husband. They might have a kid in the ICU. They would bring that person up to the church, to the front of the church. They would stop the service and they would all lay hands on them and pray for them. And you would see a bunch of tears. And it wouldn't just be the tears of the person they're praying for. It's the people that have hands on that person, tears flowing down their face because of this empathy and this love of God that's like coming out of them, and flowing towards this person. It's profoundly impacted me.
Yeah.
If you look at my movies, just take a clicker and count how many times like someone will lay a hand on a shoulder, like touch somebody, because that's where I come from. And you'll see that pattern play out over and over again. It's a lot in Jesus Revolution too. There's a lot of, laying out of hands and hugging and touching. Cause I just, that's how I was shown the power of God demonstrated through humanity.
Yeah.
I think being raised this little Pentecostal kid where they're not afraid to like put hands on you, so yeah, I think I just wish all churches were I wish churches were safe spaces, and youth groups too, where if somebody's hurting, it's not about your program, it's about stopping everything right then to help them. And they let me put a scene like that in the movie where they stopped a church service to help a guy in a lot of pain, and he needed a family, and he found it in the Jesus Revolution. So
Yeah.
so that's the story.
That's cool. And I love how you guys within the movie also shown the realness of that too, both within the moment, but also within the pastors themselves, and kind of, hey, was this real? And like having to go through that kind of struggle as well as one of them was trying to hold on to those kind of situations and trying to possibly manufacture them at some other times. So that was kind of real to be able to see not only, everything's great in the church and it all goes, it just as it should all the time, but there were some real moments where there were some disagreements, and be able to see different perspectives, be able to hash that out a little bit. And they didn't necessarily come within the time frame of the movie. They didn't come to a conclusion where they agreed and, hugged each other and, went on their merry way. They actually, separated. And that was really interesting to see how you guys were just very real, I think, as you portrayed what was going on there.
And I appreciate you saying that. We pushed really hard for as much authenticity as we could in a PG-13 movie.
Right.
I mean, you could always push things harder, but yeah, I'm very proud of where it landed. And it does. People come talk to me. It's like, man, it's so sad that they didn't reconcile, but we're all on a human journey, and it's actually biblical. There's so many people that have breakups and break away from each other. Paul and Barnabas, and, the tribes of Israel, it's encoded. It's encoded in our humanity. And oftentimes though, if you roll with it, you end up with a both and situation. So both go off and end up doing good things, where there was maybe some ego conflicts, some alpha conflicts, and that kind of thing that slows everything down. Because there's even in like as you said, it's in question whether what percentage of it is emotional hype or what percentage of it is real. There were definitely some real things that happened in the Jesus movement to me. I mean, there were people that just went cold turkey off heroin. The next morning they don't need. So I wanted that represented because that really did happen. Now, was there also emotional hype? Definitely there was. So, you have people trying to create that youth camp experience and get everybody emotionally hyped. And, we see versions of that today with the, like the intelligent lighting and the fog machines and, so yeah, but in the middle of all that, hopefully people are still finding peace with God, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to die. We're all going to die. And like all that you take with you is whatever peace you've cultivated between you and your creator. So I hope, for me, putting on kind of a humanist lens for a moment, I hope that people, even in some of the hype or like more on Chuck's side, you're definitely more like metered and disciplined. However you climb the mountain is less important to me. Just get on the mountain.
Yeah.
Because if you get on the mountain, start moving up and you start finding peace with God, it's going to look different to you than the person to your left or to your right. And that's okay, you know, but just mountain. And I did like that about Jesus Revolution. He had a bunch of people trying to get on the mountain and failing and sliding down, as we all do. I liken my spiritual journey to being on a mountain, and I slide down, you know, I slide down and lose some altitude. But then you get your toe hold back in and you start climbing again. And then you look down and realize, okay, well, if I fell all the way, it would be pretty bad right now. I've gained some altitude, you know? So yeah, man.
That's so cool.
Yeah. We really wanted the authenticity of the human side of the things, the clashes, and we didn't want to whitewash it. We didn't want it to be this perfect thing that happened, because in all honesty, it was the opposite we were trying to say, is that jars of clay, water leaks out of it. Like you're a broken piece of pottery. So even though you're a canister that contains water, you have leaks. And we didn't just want to make it this perfect thing. Like you have to show the human canister, you have to show the jar, and that it's broken and it can still hold the holy water, you know? So our, you know, we even said it at the end, but I think Chuck says something like, well, fortunately, God has a long history of using broken and flawed people. And I think that's where the church really fails. It really needs to look at it, because there is that old Quaker puritanical thing of, you need to look outwardly. You need to look like you have it all put together. You need to be able to quote scripture and talk about how many Bible studies you went to, and you went to church and all that stuff. You don't drink and you don't cuss and you don't smoke. What's interesting about all that stuff is it's external. Yep. So if we can bring the internal struggles out, you know, into the light and create more of a Christian culture where it's safe to do so, we're all going to grow. But you have to be able to have that conversation with someone and say, oh yeah, we're all just these broken pottery jars trying to hold this water, and it's okay if it leaks, you know, it's fine. But you're a human. That's what this is about. And I really love if we could get back to that. Just be real with yourself. And like, there are places in all of us that we hold in darkness that if we brought to the light, there would be a lot of peace and love, you know, they're awaiting for us, not only with God, but hopefully with like other healthy people around you that are on a spiritual journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think working with teenagers for a while now, that's one of the things that I appreciate about them so much, is they do want that transparency. They want that vulnerability. And once we can provide it in a healthy way and in environments where we can encourage that, like, there's so much growth that can happen, instead of just putting on this facade that like, oh, I do all the things, I'm morally right, but internally I'm struggling. But once we can get that out, all of a sudden we can help each other and grow together. And like you said, our journeys are going to look different, but we're all on the same journey to get to the same destination.
Yeah, I identify with the kids of today. I mean, at risk of offending, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend, but I'm done with people's moralism. You end up with a lot of hatred in that. You get stuck in the right or the wrong, and above the right and the wrong is the love of God. Because God loves you no matter what. So let's get into that. Let's get into that higher ground, you know, together. And if you have a youth leader that's able to say, guys, here's what I'm struggling with today, and lay it all out and blow people's minds. I had a pastor get up, and I was in tears. I'd never seen this before. He got up and said, and he'd had some terrible, terrible things happen in his life, in his family. But he got up and said, because of these things that are happening, guys, right now, my wife is really struggling with alcoholism, and we could really use your prayer. And dude, I wept. I was overwhelmed. I said, I literally, after we went to lunch, my wife, I said, I would follow that man into hell with a water gun, because you know how hard that is? Like, you're a spiritual leader, and you're getting up and you're saying, hey, this is real. This is what's going on. And I need you guys to know, so you can pray for me, and so I can be real and be vulnerable to you as your leader. And man, I can't tell you how much I love that man and think about him. But my greatest spiritual mentor in my entire life is an alcoholic. He's, 30 years sober, still goes to AA, but he's walked a deep, deep walk on this earth, deeper than me. And his struggles with addiction and fighting to get sober, it's deepened him spiritually. He's a deeper spiritual person than me. So I seek him out, so where a moralist would be like, oh, I don't know, man, they struggle with alcohol. I really don't think they should be leading anybody. It's the opposite. It's the opposite, because he got up above all that and he found God. And so, yeah, man, I can't bang that drum enough. And on both sides of the political spectrum, it's actually easier to be a moralist. It's easier to be in political idolatry and like choose your side and paint your face blue or red or whatever you want to do and start screaming at people in all caps. That's actually easier.
Yeah.
The harder thing to do is, I got my shirt on, but love your enemies. And in that sense, I always make this joke, and I hope it's not offensive, but it's like, if you hold the teachings of Jesus to the highest level, and the rubric is for you to really be a follower of Christ, you need to love your enemies. It's like, okay, I might have met 4 real Christians in my entire life, Yeah. So I love the gauntlet of love that Jesus threw down. And when the moralist would try to trap him, he would always ask a question that turned it back to something spiritual, instead of like, well, I'm on this side or that side. He's like, well, let me tell you a story about who a neighbor is. Instead of you guys trying to trap me, let me tell you a story about who actually loved their neighbor. And man, again, it's powerful. If you look at everything he did and his actions he took and the time that he spent and the things that he said, it's so much of it is actuated from the love of God and loving everyone.
Yeah.
And really, when he got tough, it seemed to me that he was pushing back against the people that had forgotten that and would rather be in their moralist views. And man, these kids today, they don't want to hear it, man.
Nope.
Like, they want to hear how you're trying to help the planet get better and how you're trying to help end suffering in the world. And what's crazy about that is, man, Jesus is like a great example. So if we could turn them back to the things that he did, I think, I think this new generation will bring forth a beautiful Jesus culture that I think we need. I think we need a revolution in the church. We need to turn back to love,
Yeah. Amen. And I'm hoping,
right, sorry, you got
that's great. No, and we're done. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I think that's fantastic. I mean, you're speaking my language. I think you're speaking our audience's language, because we really believe that this next generation we could see something like the Jesus Revolution again if this next generation really does just fall in love with Jesus again, to like not let the shortcomings of the church and the shortcomings of any leader that's been out there that's led them astray or anything like that. But let's just fall in love with Jesus again and what he wants for the world, and to understand that he can use them and he can use us. And it'd be we can't wait to see, what happens when the next generation really does grab a hold of that and start to run. And I love how you guys really shown that within this film. So one of the things that I am so excited to tell our audience from being able to see it twice is that it is not a cringy Christian movie. And I was so excited to watch it and to know, like, man, okay, I could actually, have non-Christian, come with me and see this. And I won't be going, oh, I can't believe they said that, or, oh, I can't believe, whatever. It was very real. And I think that, we talked about that earlier. That was so crucial, I think, in how you guys portrayed everything. It was very authentic. It was so inspired. And I was moved by the story. Everyone I talked to from the screenings, they also felt the same way. We felt pumped as soon as we walked out, just ready to go out and lead other people to Jesus and start another Jesus movement. I know that Greg Laurie wrote the book about his story and everything, but I'd love to know how did the idea of the movie itself come to be?
Yeah, it's a great story. I'll try to, I'm being long-winded with you, so I'll try to do it shorter. When we did Woodlawn, that whole story was actually an offshoot of the Jesus movement. So as research is going down for Woodlawn, one of the Irwin brothers, John, discovered online, I think he saw this crazy psychedelic painting of Jesus, and it was on Time magazine. It said Jesus Revolution. He's like, what is this? It was like a mystery box. And he tried to find the archives online, and Time doesn't have that particular article digitally archived. So what he ended up doing was ordering a collector's edition item off of eBay for like $150. But when he got that Jesus Revolution Time magazine, he opened up and read it. He's like, "This is our next movie, guys." And we got pumped about it. But that was right after Woodlawn, and we were going into I Can Only Imagine, and we finished I Can Only Imagine, and that's the one they wanted to do next. Well, Lionsgate came along, and we're so appreciative of them, but they wanted to move it downstream a little bit more and do a couple more titles in front of that. So we delayed there, and I've been doing tons of research. I had a phone book of cool like anecdotes and stuff I had found, and done all this research on Chuck and Lonnie, and it was amazing. And Greg was writing the book, and we were getting ready for it. Well, it got paused then. Then it actually mounted up, and I wasn't available. John Gunn, who was one of the screenwriters, was going to do a version of it, but the pandemic hit, and they unmounted it. They shot it down, which I understand completely. Well, it's fortunate for me, or I feel really blessed, because the third time I tried to mount, I was available and I wanted to do it. So, in 2022, the third time we're trying to do it, we actually finished it, and so I'm very grateful. But yeah, it came from John Irwin pushing deeper into what really happened, and it was an untold story cinematically. And it's been amazing. People have stopped me out going, "Wow, it's about time somebody did something about this." Like, people know there's like a really special time, and that it was a formulative time in history.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's been the origin story, but it started nearly 7 years ago. So
Wow. That's awesome. And I love how you got quite the cast in this movie as well. I mean, Jonathan Roumie, Kimberly Williams Paisley, Kelsey Grammer, and so many others. What was the feeling on set with all the cast and crew?
It was amazing. It's the most overwhelmingly positive experience I've ever had on a movie. Everybody showed up in high spirits with great attitudes and ready to work. And that's the crew as well. It's hard to describe to people what happens in movies, but by and large, it can be a very toxic culture. You're doing 12 to 16-hour days. Sometimes you don't get even enough turnaround to sleep. And it brings out the best and the worst in people. But in this particular case, it was just beautiful, man. I mean, it was beautiful. The most talented cast by far I've ever gotten a chance to work with. And everybody showed up, not just to play a part, but to work. And I mean, Kelsey Grammer, he showed up to work. Nice. And he's unbelievably revelatory in the role for me. I knew he'd bring that big, like, robust, presence of, he does that really awesome. And he's funny. He's hilarious human being, just one of the funniest dudes ever. But I didn't expect him to be so in touch with his heart and his spirituality. But it was beautiful what he did, and he would overwhelm the sets. Sometimes there would be people crying just watching him work, because he was just touching something so deep in himself and really trying to bring that out. And he did it. I think it's the best thing he's ever done. So yeah, Kelsey was definitely. And then you're always, when you're younger and you have these veteran dudes, you're always a little intimidated, because like they've done it longer than you've been alive, so you're like, am I going to fail this person? So, but he was just so gracious and kind, and would listen if we wanted to do something different. And yeah, just great. And Jonathan Roumie, such a dedicated actor, so passionate, lost 20 pounds for the role, went to visit Lonnie's grave, got a dialect coach, studied everything he could on Lonnie. It was amazing to see the lengths he went to do this right. And wow. I don't know, honestly. I don't want to. Let me just put it this way: I've never seen anyone care more about a role and doing it right. And he would, man, I'm not joking. I'm not making this up. He would talk to me about Lonnie like he knew him, and he would cry, and it would get on you. You'd start crying with him. But he's like, I just want this to be right, man. It was beautiful, dude. It was beautiful. Wow. But all that puts you on, and when you're directing, when everybody's like showing up to work that hard, it brings out the best in you too. So Kimberly Williams Paisley, she's funny. She's like this super turbocharged, just fun person, just so fun. And Courtney, me and my family have been huge fans of his since Super 8. Super 8 was a really important film for my family and my kids, because my kids were getting little cameras and running around and making little short films like those kids were. And, being raised in a filmmaking family. So that, them getting to meet Joel and just how hard Joel worked, and he's really becoming a wonderful actor. And then the other amazing people that we found, just casting, just throwing out a casting net. We had amazing casting directors, multiple casting directors on this that are just at their A game. So Ali Ioniti is playing Chuck's daughter, Jeanette. We had Anna Grace Barlow playing Kathy. She's like a vision in this movie. We had Charlie Patton, who played Connie, Lonnie's wife, Julia Campbell, Jolie Jenkins, Nick Bishop. I mean, tons of people. So, and then the local cast that we found in Atlanta and Louisiana area. Like, my big thing I don't argue about it, but I push for always is, you spend all your money, you go to LA, you get your big people, and then the rest of the cast is a bit of an afterthought. But I always come in like swinging a sledgehammer. I'm like, all these guys have to be good. The local talent, even more so, because they're going up against like Kelsey Grammer. You're going to cast some local dude in Atlanta, and he's going to go up against Kelsey Grammer. They have to be amazing. And like, we found our people, so even the Deacons, like these guys that they're not on screen that long, but they just hold the thing up. And so, I can't stand up. And then our crew as well. I really am attenuated to crew as a filmmaker because of my origin story. I set my own lights. I shot my own shots. I edited my own stuff. I did my own craft service, and so I definitely feel at home with the crew. And it was just beautiful to get the texts and the emails and see people in tears on set as we were wrapping. Of just realizing, not only do we feel like we made something special, it was a special time to be together. And so, you can feel it. I think in the movie, you can feel it. I think you just feel that we wanted it to be that buoyant, fun, like, 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, that buoyancy of the hippie movement and all that, and just the colors. And I'm not lying. It was hard days. It was long days, but it had that joyful feeling that was pervasive even amidst the hard days. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it definitely comes across. I mean, I think every actor, every scene, everything in the movie is so believable. And you believe that, like, I feel like I definitely was transported back to that actual movement because of everything that you guys put into it. And so, it definitely shows for sure. And I love how you guys were even like funny with Jonathan Roumie, like, who played Jesus in The Chosen, like even addressing the fact that, he kind of looks like Jesus also in this, and, and just having fun with that. And it's amazing to see Kelsey Grammer, who has been a part of something, to be a part of something like this, who's recently, in recent years rekindled his own faith and seen, what God has brought him through and his struggles and everything as well. So, do you guys have any funny or maybe impactful stories that happened on set while you guys were filming?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you about Kelsey first. He took a weekend retreat with some of his buddies, and they were lamenting the fact that they had just done a lot of work, like we all do. They had done a lot of work for money and just to pay the bills, which we all will have to do that at some point. Unfortunately, just in the world in which we live, you want them all to be passion projects, but 0.001 of 1% get to just have a passionate career all the way through.
Sure.
So he has this retreat with his buddies, and they lament this fact together that they've just done a lot of stuff for the money that they're not really proud of. And they made sort of a semi-pact together. They're like almost like a blood oath, but we're going to try our hardest to only do things that matter spiritually, that matter, that we're passionate about in our hearts. Well, he gets back from that retreat, and that Monday morning, the Jesus Rev script was in his inbox, and he read it.
Wow.
He called his agent. He's like, I'm in. Didn't even talk about money. And the agent's like, oh, that's not a good position for an agent, but it's like, I'm in, make this happen. And he did it for not much money. I mean, he could have nailed this for a lot more money, but he was passionate about it and he wanted to do it. And I'm so grateful. I'm trying to think. We had some tornadoes hit. That was pretty crazy.
Wow.
In a fun fact, and you won't even believe me when I tell you this, but 85% of this movie was shot in Alabama. There's incentive programs. States want you to come shoot your movies in their states, and they'll actually give you rebates back. And so Alabama is really hot right now because they give you good money back. So the producers were like, "Hey, Brent, you guys got to shoot this in Alabama." And of course, me and John Irwin complained because we wanted to, we're like, "What? No, they're like, dude, you'll get half the days to shoot if we go to LA." We're like, okay. So we capitulated, but that ended up being the really fun creative challenge of like everywhere you look, okay, can I make this feel like Southern California? Can I make this feel like Southern California? So yeah, but we're in Atlanta in the Bay, Mobile, Daphne, Fairhope, and water spouts come in off that bay all the time. And sometimes they'll hit land and, turn into a tornado. So we for the first time in my career, we had to pull the power on the generator because the lightning strikes were within proximity of our set. And there's all these strident rules about lightning strikes. And it gets within, I think, 6 miles. They don't even tell you. There's like, everything just goes dark. Wow. And you're like, oh, what? Yeah, we had to pull it, guys, get someplace safe. So that was pretty wild. So we got shut down one day because of tornadoes. And it was kind of funny because I'm a Southern kid. I've lived in Tornado Alley my entire life, but to see some of the LA people like freaking out about the tornadoes is pretty funny. But I went to him later. I said, look, if I was in an earthquake, I would be freaking out right now. So this is our natural disaster zone. You guys have your own thing going in LA, but yeah, man. But yeah, it was scary. It was crazy, but people rallied and we came back the next day and got back to it. And Lionsgate let us add, I think, an extra day to make up for it. And so yeah, those are some fun things that happened, and pretty crazy things. But overall, it was pretty smooth as far as filmmaking goes. There's generally just terrible things. It seems like trying to stop it from happening. But yeah, we persevered, and those are probably some of the craziest.
Yeah,
a couple of the craziest stories, I think.
Cool. That's awesome. And I love, I've had the privilege to be able to talk to some other people, actors or directors and things within the Christian movie world. And it does seem like there's blessings upon blessings that God is just orchestrating behind the scenes and allowing things like this that he really wants to happen. It just kind of pushes forward, and to hear that you guys had just an amazing time with the cast and the crew, and there, of course, things like tornadoes, I guess, are gonna happen, but to hear that everybody was pushing through and they really wanted this to happen, and just to hear that it was an amazing time on set is so awesome. And I'm sure that you can look back at it and see just God's hands and the blessing all the way throughout the whole thing.
It felt really guided. It felt very guided throughout. I literally, most movies do not feel like this, and I kept looking up at the sky waiting for like the meteorite to hit me. I was just like, okay, when does the shoe drop? I was just bracing myself, and it just never happened. It was just very guided. Not saying things that weren't trying to fall apart, but sure. On the whole, on the level, it was a very guided process that didn't have a lot of emotional, spiritual wrinkles throughout. So it's pretty great. Awesome. Can I go back to one thing you talked to? Sure. You asked. Okay. Me and John just did Babylon Bee 2 weeks ago, and we were just really nervous about are they going to roast us? Are they going to make fun of us the whole time? And but it's so funny because the banner for our podcast is "Why are Christian movies so bad?" ? I was like, oh, but they just don't do. They just put everybody in the chokehold, It's just scorched earth, But one thing that did come out there, like to your point, and I'm really excited about, is a lot of people do want to talk about their faith. And I think there are a lot of very, very talented artists, even in the Hollywood system, actors, producers, directors, writers, editors, that have just sat it out because we need a certain quality level to feel good about it. And it's nothing to do about being ashamed of your faith or God or whatever. It's just like, hey, the quality is not anything that I want to participate in right now. And so you saying you appreciated it, that it didn't have any cringe in it, that means a lot to me. And I've been hearing that refrain a lot. I talked to I talked to a critic, and it was so funny. But he's a scorched earth dude too as well. But he said, he goes, yeah, when I rate Christian films, I rate them in eye rolls. And I was like, ooh. And he goes, yeah, your movie didn't have any eye rolls, and I really appreciate that.
That's awesome.
I was like, okay, wow, So Christian films don't have to be bad. As a matter of fact, they can be great. And so when little filmmakers come up and talk to me about wanting to share their faith, I was like, yeah, go look at the Sistine Chapel, because Christian art can be great.
Absolutely.
It can be some of the greatest art in the world.
Yeah.
And that gets me to a whole other rabbit trail. But like, I think a lot of people are making Christian films that don't have a Christian label on them that actually move me deeper than something that's inside the little Christian silo. Obviously for me, where I'm at spiritually, I want people from all walks of life to go see this. I want everybody from the hardcore ultra evangelicals down to the atheists to go see it, because I think there's something in it for everyone. And to spin back to youth groups, I think you're going to have that mosaic in your group. You're going to have atheist kids that are going to youth group for whatever reason. Maybe they like a girl, or that friend group is really cool, or they feel like a vibe, or whatever it is. But I really do feel like we tailored this movie to meet people where they are, like irrespective of like where their beliefs are at, or like where their walk of life is. I guarantee you, I have a really good Jewish friend that's going to go see it. And I know he's going to call. He's like, man, that was really good, dude. That was cool. And we had a bunch of Lionsgate execs that aren't Christians, walked out of our test screening, like in tears. So I don't know, man, I'm excited about it. I'm definitely, like I told you before we rolled, but I'm definitely going through the roller coaster of emotions as we're pushing up to the release date. But that's natural for a director to feel like that.
Sure.
But I'm excited for it to get out in the world. It feels like you raise a kid and they get to be college age, and you have to let her go off to college and have a life of her own now,
Yeah. I'm excited for other youth pastors. I'm excited for their youth group kids to be able to come see this and see, how it will not only inform them about what God has done in the past, but also inspire, like maybe this could happen again. Maybe this could happen in our time. There's so many similarities. I know Greg Laurie talks about this as well. There's so many similarities between that time and our time today. And I think Jesus is ready to do something again in the lives of young people and the lives of, the people in our culture. But, we need maybe something like this is what will ignite it and go, maybe we can do this again and see what happens. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to share with you, our podcast is focused on helping youth workers grow, but also on helping them getting connected. And so in a world that's been so disconnected, unfortunately, youth workers aren't immune to this. So before we wrap up, I'd love to give you a chance to just share some encouragement to our audience.
Yeah. Well, you just jogged my memory. I guess I'll close by saying this. I always tell kids, especially when they're like going out on dates, because you always hear dinner and a movie. That's wrong. You should flip it. You should do a movie and a dinner. And because you can go see the movie, and if it's bad, you can just shred it all through dinner. If it's good, you can talk about it, and like you'll find out so much about your person. But if you go to dinner, it could be awkward and weird. So I always tell people to flip it and go movie and a dinner, because you always have something to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think with Jesus Rev, that is amazing. I would love to see youth pastors all over the country just have almost like a no holds barred conversation, round circle, or even kids could pass up questions anonymously to be like, what are the themes? Well, what do you think is missing in the church today? What's missing in our youth group that you wish? Like, this movie opens up your heart. And I think a lot of people cry. They don't even know why they're crying, but it's just such a beautiful movie about inclusion, including and loving the other and making safe space for people that maybe don't look like you, don't act like you, maybe don't even share the same beliefs as you. And so yeah, I think that's great. I think the encouragement I would give, and half of you guys are already doing this for sure, but be honest, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and transparent, and let your heart break out of inside your body, because your kids are looking for that, and they're actually judging you against whether you're actually doing that or not. And I think what's crazy is with these younger kids, it's actually more of a trust fall than you think, because they're looking for people to lead them. But you have to be emotionally honest and vulnerable and broken, and have that brokenness in full display. And if you are a leader like that, your kids are going to return that in kind, and you're going to end up with just some of the most amazing experiences with these kids. In closing, my wife is a life coach, and so much of the dark and the hurt and the suffering and the oppression we see is because of trauma. And if we can get kids talking about how they got hurt, and wouldn't it be beautiful if that is happening in the church instead of with a therapist, or instead of with their toxic friends, or instead of them like going to drugs or whatever it is as they find their identity? What if this whole thing flipped and they're like, man, I need to go talk about this in my church?
Yeah.
Like, that would be incredible, you know. And I've been in spiritual settings where I've felt like I could be myself and bring some of my dark to the light, and it can happen. And so my encouragement would be, if you're creating a safe space for your kids where they can bring their dark to the light, you're changing the planet. You really are. And I'm appreciative of what you've done. Kim and I worked with youth groups for many years, and it was some of the funnest times of our life. If you need some hardcore skits, hit me up on Instagram. We'll send you a couple skits that we did. But yeah, man, you guys are doing important work. And, you know, for me, going back to what we said at the beginning, above all of our moralist views, above the right and the wrong, it's like there's this radiation of God's love, constant love, trying to reach out. And if we can cut through all that, because quite frankly, the kids of today are stuck in some of that too. You know, like, it's real. Like, you have to have you got to have your stances on everything, and you're signaling out on your Instagram page like what you feel about different issues. And but if we leave love in the margins, or if we leave love underneath all that, we're going to continue to fail and just be lost. And so, yeah, I hope that's an encouragement to somebody, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, it's an encouragement to me, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much. And thanks for being on today. Yeah.
Yeah. I love this generation. I think these kids can change the world. I think they are pushing us back globally towards social justice. And you can find so much overlap with social justice and what Jesus was doing. And, you know, that's another thing I would say, is meet kids where they're passionate about justice. That there's a lot of common ground. That's a Venn diagram that, you know, you could spend a lot of time looking at. So, well, thanks for having me out, man.
Yeah, no problem. Where can people find more information about the movie? We know it releases, I think, in theaters everywhere on February 24th, 2023. But where can people find more about the movie, and also maybe connect with you online?
Yeah, you could go to JesusRevolutionMovie.com, and there's actually links to go pre-buy tickets now. Like, there's a lot of pre-buy happening, which is really cool. But if you don't want to mess with all that, just go find your favorite theater. The tickets are available. So if you use an app to buy your tickets, you could buy tickets now, which is really cool. And then if you want to find me, it's just Brent McCorkle, BrentMcCorkle, at Instagram or Facebook. And I love talking to people and meeting new people. I love talking, if you guys have anybody in your youth groups that you can tell are super passionate about film. I love mentoring kids. I really felt alone in the process, and like I didn't have a strong mentor. And I'm trying to help as many kids as I can, because it's a pretty hard business to break into. And it's good to spend time with people who are actually in the business. And I love to talk to people and try to encourage them, because it's hard. It's a hard life path, but it's also very hard to get into it. And a lot of kids get real discouraged, but there's tons of very talented kids that deserve to be in the space. They just need a little bit of guidance and help. So if you have somebody in your youth group that you want to, throw my way, do it. I love talking to kids about this stuff. Yeah, man, that's Instagram, Facebook. Go to the website or just buy the tickets. It's going wide. It's in 2,700 theaters opening weekend. And so we're real excited about it, man. I hope it does good, but more than the numbers, I hope the people that need to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And And thank you so much, Brent, for being on today. Thank you for all your work that you've done on several movies, but especially this one with Jesus Revolution. May God bless your ministry that you're doing through the film industry.
Thanks for the time, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that just as much as I enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to share this with others. Brent has quite the story, and he loves helping others to tell their stories as well. And Jesus Revolution is one of those amazing stories that he's been able to help tell. Remember, the movie releases in theaters on February 24th, 2023. And if you are listening to this later, after it's left the theaters, I'm sure it will eventually be available to purchase or stream online as well. And as we wrap up episode 99 on our 7-year anniversary, I can hardly believe that we are almost at 100 episodes. That 100th episode will drop later this February, just ahead of the Jesus Revolution movie, as a matter of fact. And to celebrate on that 100th episode, we're going to have several amazing giveaways. So be sure to tune in to listen, but also to learn how you can enter those giveaways. I also want to say thanks again to our sponsor for this episode. Be sure to check out gshades.org. That's gshades.org to check out their curriculum, their blog, and so much more. And be sure to use the promo code CONNECTION at checkout so you can receive $20 off your order. Thanks again, G Shades, and thanks to you all for being here once again. Be sure to connect with us on social media. You can find all those links as well as all the other links that were mentioned in this episode in our show notes. And as always, be sure to stay connected and may God bless your ministry.